Good evening and welcome to Cross Currents, our weekly program dedicated to exploring complex societal issues. Tonight, we delve into a particularly thought-provoking question. Should subliminal messaging be used to manipulate human actions? For clarity, subliminal messages are stimuli presented below the threshold of conscious perception, yet potentially capable of influencing thoughts, feelings, or behaviors. Joining us to debate this are Dr. Evelyn Hayes, a distinguished psychologist who sees potential for ethical applications, and Mr. Samuel Carter, an esteemed ethicist and media analyst who argues against any such use. Dr. Hayes, Mr. Carter, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here to discuss such a critical topic. I want to begin by acknowledging the inherent controversy surrounding subliminal messaging. Its history is certainly checkered with concerns about manipulation, and rightly so. However, my position is not one of advocating for its uncontrolled or widespread commercial or political use, which I firmly believe would be unethical. Instead, I propose that we consider the potential for good in very specific, highly regulated contexts, guided by stringent ethical oversight. Imagine, for instance, its application in public health campaigns, perhaps to subtly reinforce messages encouraging smoking cessation or healthier eating habits, particularly among populations resistant to overt messaging. Another area could be in therapeutic settings, assisting individuals in overcoming addictions or phobias, always with their informed consent and as a supplement to established therapies. The key principles here would be absolute transparency regarding the research and methodologies, explicit consent wherever remotely feasible, and oversight by independent ethical review boards. We must clearly distinguish this from the kind of covert manipulation used in advertising or political propaganda, which aims to exploit vulnerabilities for commercial or ideological gain. The core question I believe we need to address is this: if a tool, when carefully managed and ethically applied, can gently guide individuals towards demonstrably positive behaviors without overriding their fundamental free will, should we dismiss it out of hand simply because of its potential for misuse? Is it not our responsibility to explore all avenues that might contribute to societal well-being, provided we can establish robust safeguards?
Thank you, Alex. And Dr. Hayes, while I appreciate your nuanced perspective, I must respectfully but firmly disagree. My position is unequivocal. Subliminal messaging, by its very definition and mechanism, is inherently manipulative and therefore profoundly unethical, regardless of the claimed intent or the context of its application. The fundamental problem lies in its method. It seeks to bypass the conscious, rational mind. It aims to implant ideas or urges without the individual's awareness or critical assessment. This is a direct violation of personal autonomy and cognitive liberty. Every individual has the right to know what information they are being exposed to and to make conscious choices based on that information. To argue for ethical subliminal messaging is, in my view, a dangerous oxymoron. The moment a message is designed to be unperceived, it steps outside the bounds of ethical communication, which relies on transparency and respect for the recipient's rational faculties. Furthermore, the risks of abuse are simply too great. If we legitimize its use, even in limited contexts, who decides what constitutes good or positive behavior? What safeguards can truly prevent its misuse by powerful entities, governments, corporations, seeking to control populations or promote their own agendas under the guise of public benefit? The argument for its effectiveness for positive change is often speculative, while the potential for negative exploitation is concrete and terrifying. We are treading on a very slippery slope, one that could lead to a society where individuals are subtly conditioned without their knowledge. The very idea of influencing people below their conscious awareness erodes the foundation of trust between institutions and the public. It fosters an environment of suspicion and undermines the principles of open, democratic discourse.
Mr. Carter, you raise valid concerns about autonomy and the potential for misuse, which I share. However, to label all subliminal influence as inherently manipulative perhaps oversimplifies a complex issue. We are constantly influenced by subtle cues in our environment, background music in a store, the design of a public space, even the phrasing used in everyday conversation. These also operate on a less than fully conscious level. The key differentiators for the applications I propose are explicit intent for demonstrable benefit and the presence of robust, transparent regulatory frameworks. It's not about covert commercial gain or political persuasion. Regarding the slippery slope argument, this is a concern with many emerging technologies, yet we don't ban artificial intelligence or genetic engineering outright. Instead, we strive to develop ethical guidelines and legal structures to manage their risks. Dismissing a potential tool for societal benefit, such as aiding in public health crises or reducing harmful addictions, simply because it could be misused, seems to me a premature foreclosure on innovation, especially if those risks can be proactively and rigorously managed through oversight and a commitment to ethical principles.
Dr. Hayes, the comparison to environmental cues is, I believe, a false equivalence. While we are influenced by our surroundings, subliminal messaging is a deliberate, targeted attempt to bypass conscious processing with a specific engineered message. And while you speak of intent and regulation, how can we truly police the intent behind a message designed to be hidden? How can regulatory bodies effectively monitor something that, by its nature, is imperceptible to those it targets and often to overseers themselves without specialized, intrusive methods? You champion, quote, ethical manipulation, but this remains a fundamental contradiction in terms for me. The moment you intentionally seek to influence someone without their conscious consent to that specific influence, you are, by definition, manipulating them. The idea of establishing, quote, robust regulatory frameworks for something so inherently covert is optimistic at best, and naive at worst. The potential for these messages to be poorly designed, to have unintended psychological consequences, or to be subtly altered for nefarious purposes once the technology is accepted, is immense. This isn't merely about a slippery slope. It's about the fundamental erosion of free will and the sanctity of individual thought. The risk of unintended psychological harm, or the normalization of covert influence techniques, far outweighs any speculative benefits.
Thank you both for those compelling rebuttals. We're now moving into a more direct discussion. Dr. Hayes, you've mentioned specific, ethically regulated context. Could you provide a concrete example of an ethical application you envision, and detail the specific safeguards you believe would be necessary to prevent its misuse?
Certainly, Alex. Consider a scenario involving a widespread public health initiative to combat a severe addiction crisis, perhaps opioid addiction. A potential application could involve embedding carefully designed, non-coercive subliminal cues within public service announcements or informational materials provided in clinics, reinforcing messages of hope, the availability of support, and the benefits of seeking treatment. Safeguards would be paramount. Firstly, all such messages would be developed by a diverse panel of experts, including ethicists, psychologists, and community representatives. Secondly, the exact content and methodology would be publicly declared and open to scrutiny. Thirdly, rigorous, independent research would be required to demonstrate both efficacy and the absence of unintended negative consequences before any implementation. And crucially, this would always be an adjunct to, not a replacement for, transparent information and accessible support services. The goal isn't to force behavior, but to gently nudge individuals already contemplating change towards resources that can help them, in a way that complements conscious efforts.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. Mr. Carter, a question for you. Imagine a hypothetical scenario where irrefutable, peer-reviewed scientific proof demonstrated that a specific subliminal message, deployed during an acute public safety crisis like an imminent natural disaster, significantly increased compliance with evacuation orders, demonstrably saving thousands of lives with no discernible negative psychological side effects. Would such evidence alter your fundamental opposition?
That's a challenging hypothetical, Alex, designed to test the limits of principle. My concern remains that even in such an extreme case, we are legitimizing a technology that is inherently deceptive. While saving lives is an undeniable good, the method used still involves bypassing rational decision-making. Who determines when a crisis is severe enough to warrant such measures? Who controls the message? There's also the risk of crisis creep, where the definition of a crisis expands, allowing for more frequent use of such techniques. However, if the evidence was truly irrefutable, and the application strictly limited to immediate, life-threatening situations with transparent post-hoc disclosure and oversight, it might force a re-evaluation of that specific, narrow application, but not my opposition to its broader use. My core objection to its use in non-crisis, everyday influence remains steadfast, because the ethical compromise is too great.
Mr. Carter, if I may, you speak of its deceptive nature. How do you see carefully regulated, ethically overseen subliminal messaging as fundamentally different from other subtle environmental cues that we know influence behavior? For example, the use of calming colors in hospitals or nudge architecture in urban planning that encourages healthier choices, like taking the stairs. These also often operate below full conscious awareness, yet are generally accepted when the intent is positive.
Dr. Hayes, the difference lies in the directness and specificity of the embedded message, and the intent to bypass awareness of that specific message. Calming colors or architectural nudges are general environmental factors. They don't implant a specific directive or piece of information into someone's mind without their knowledge that a message is being conveyed. Subliminal messages, as typically defined, are distinct, hidden communications. Furthermore, to your earlier point, what compelling evidence exists to suggest that subliminal messaging offers a significant advantage over transparent educational campaigns in achieving positive societal change? And crucially, doesn't the inherent deceptiveness, even if well-intentioned, risk irrevocably damaging public trust in institutions that might employ such methods? Once the public knows or suspects they are being targeted by hidden messages, will they not become more cynical and resistant to all forms of public guidance?
In closing, I want to reiterate that I am not advocating for the unfettered or manipulative use of subliminal messaging. My argument is for cautious, open-minded scientific inquiry. We stand at a point where technology offers many potential avenues for addressing significant societal challenges, from public health to individual well-being. To categorically dismiss the exploration of subliminal techniques when they could potentially be applied in extremely limited, ethically guided, and transparently overseen ways for genuine benefit would be, I believe, a missed opportunity. The focus must always be on augmenting conscious choice and providing support, never on coercion or undermining autonomy. Our goal should be to explore all ethical avenues for societal improvement, and that includes rigorous research into tools that might, under the strictest safeguards, help us achieve that. Dismissal based on past misuses or speculative fears may prevent us from developing carefully controlled applications that could one day contribute positively, provided those safeguards are inviolable and transparent.
To conclude, while I acknowledge Dr. Hayes' call for careful research, I maintain that the inherent nature of subliminal messaging poses risks that far outweigh any speculative benefits. The core issue remains. It is a technique designed to influence individuals beneath their level of conscious awareness, which fundamentally undermines personal autonomy and the capacity for rational, informed decision-making. The potential for abuse by governments, corporations, or any entity seeking to exert control is simply too high, and the challenges of effective, transparent regulation for something inherently hidden are, in my view, insurmountable. Transparent communication, education, and open persuasion are always the ethically superior methods for encouraging positive behavior and fostering a well-informed society. Protecting the sanctity of conscious choice and vigorously resisting any form of hidden manipulation is not merely a preference, It is a vital necessity for the preservation of a free and democratic society. The potential cost to our cognitive liberty is a price too high to pay for uncertain gains.
Dr. Evelyn Hayes, Mr. Samuel Carter, thank you both for an illuminating and robust debate on this complex subject. We've heard compelling arguments. On one hand, the potential for subliminal messaging to achieve societal good under strict ethical controls and transparency, and on the other, the profound ethical risks it poses to personal autonomy and the potential for its misuse. Ultimately, the question of how we balance emerging technological capabilities with fundamental ethical principles and individual autonomy remains one for continued societal discussion. Thank you for joining us on Cross Currents. Good evening.